Hey guys, welcome back to another hockey video. Jarome Iginla will forever be loved by the fans of Calgary, as his commitment to both the team and the community touched the hearts of many throughout his time as a Flame. Most people know that Iggy unfortunately didn't spend his entire career in Calgary. When the Flames failed to qualify for the playoffs in the 09-10 season, many began to question whether Iginla would stick around. Iggy stated that he wanted to be a Flame, but if a trade was to occur, he would understand. Things got worse the following season, as Calgary would fall dead last in the standings, and by the 12-13 season, with Calgary showing no signs of improvement, the Flames decided to finally let him go, trading Iginla to Pittsburgh for next to nothing in return. Now, some people's memory gets fuzzy at this point, but some still remember that Iginla became a Bruin a year after. At 36 years old, he was still making an impact, producing his final 60-plus point season and helping Boston make the playoffs. And this is where people's memories begin to fall off. The Bruins struggled with the salary cap and were forced to let Iginla walk. He would sign with the Colorado Avalanche for the 14-15 season, and that Avs team was rough. He still led the team in goals, but after 2 disappointing seasons, the Avalanche would try one last time to get Iginla a title, shipping him off at the 2016-17 deadline, making Iginla end his career as a king. Yeah. Although he only played in 19 games, almost everyone forgets his stay in LA, and perhaps it's because he made little to no impact once he arrived, only producing 9 points and being let go once the season was over. Iginla would then retire come 2018 and would be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame 2 years later, unfortunately being one call away from hoisting the Stanley Cup. At the time of recording, I'm getting set to head on vacation, so when this is uploaded, I'll be chilling in Tennessee, but it's been a while since we've done a video going over NHL stars who played on random teams, so I'd figure I'd do so once again. But before we get any further, I gotta give a shout out to today's sponsor, Manscaped. Manscaped is back with the all-new Lawnmower 4.0. Their 4th generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology. Unlike the previous 3.0, the 4.0 has a multifunctional on-off switch that can engage a travel lock, as well as giving you the ability to turn on or off the 4000K LED spotlight for a more precise shave. The wireless charging system is also a nice addition, as it can help increase battery life. Manscaped also has the Weed Whacker nose and ear trimmer, which can help trim the hard to reach areas most other trimmers can't get to. And finally, a nice little addition to include features a bottle of fresh smelling cologne that can now help you smell as fresh as you'll be looking. Father's Day is right around the corner, and if you're looking for a gift to give, then Manscaped's got you covered. Go to manscaped.com and use my promo code IDGT at checkout to get 20% off and free international shipping. Once again, thanks to Manscaped for the sponsor. Now let's get back to the video.
You've been around for a long time. You know the benefits, the pluses of being a pro and the minuses. Are they still, do the pluses far outweigh the minuses?
Well, they have for me. You know, obviously I'm still around. That's pretty lucky.
This is 48-year-old Chris Chelios, still playing hockey and returning once again to the NHL. 2 years prior to this interview, the Red Wings would send down the aging defenseman after he would go pointless in 28 games, and it seemed as if his days in the league were numbered. But after grinding it out in the AHL with the Wings and Thrashers affiliates, he would get one last shot, signing a 2-way deal with Atlanta and making headlines once he was set to make his return. While doing some research on Chelios, I came across some mind-blowing statistics. When Chelios made his return, the average age of the Thrashers was just 27 years old, and 7 players weren't even born when Chelios made his debut in 1983. Chelios was always a reliable defenseman, and his durability was one of the main reasons he was able to stick around as long as he did. But many questioned whether or not Chelios could keep up with the faster-paced NHL. So when he was called up from Chicago, he hoped to prove his doubters wrong and would attempt to spark the team, helping them gain momentum for a playoff push. But unfortunately, he became nothing more than a shell of his former self. Chelios would only play in 7 games as a Thrasher, and just like his last season in Detroit, he wouldn't produce a single point. 3 months after making his return for one last dance, on April 7th, 2010, the Thrashers would call Chelios down town for one final time, as after that season was up, Chris Chelios would officially announce his retirement, ending his 26-year NHL career. It's amazing to see how long Chelios was able to make a lasting impact, as even though he failed to produce come the tail end of his career, he still showed that he was capable of making a professional roster. But unlike Chelios, another player in today's video had no problem racking up points, as Kings legend Marcel Dionne would stay productive until the very end of his career. Most people know that Dionne was once a Red Wing, and that he was traded to the Kings, becoming the powerhouse we know him as today. But what many forget is that he didn't retire a member of the Kings organization. And to explain why, we need to go back to 1987. The Kings made the playoffs every year from 1976 to 1982, headlined by Dionne's Triple Crown line, but they would only advance to the second round 3 times throughout their run, and as the Kings got older, their dominance began to dwindle down. By 1987, the Kings were forced to get younger, and Dionne would now have to mentor the next group of Kings greats. Marcel would take 3 in particular under his wing, those being Jim Carson, Steve Duchesne, and Calder Trophy winner Luc Robitaille. But Dionne was 35, and he feared his chance at a championship was going to expire if he stayed in LA, and once he began to have a falling out with head coach Pat Quinn, he made it clear that either he wanted the roster to be built competitively or he wanted out. So, at the 1987 trade deadline, Dionne got his wish and would get shipped off to the New York Rangers, playing in 14 games, recording 10 points. Dionne did make the playoffs that year, but what was ironic was that his Kings would also make the playoffs without him on the team. Although Dionne didn't retire a King or a Stanley Cup champion, he is still loved to this day by the fans in LA, much like another player in today's video, as when you think of the Maple Leafs, you think of Matt Sundin. That's because his impact in Toronto will never be forgotten. Sundin would help revive the organization, but come 2007, it was clear his Leafs were on the decline. Sundin's name began to surface in trade rumors, and many believed the Leafs should trade him to a contender, but Sundin didn't agree with the media, stating that he didn't want to be a rental player, and that if he were ever to win, he wanted it to happen naturally over the course of his career. He would go as far as rejecting to waive his no movement clause and would remain with the Leafs for the remainder of the 07-08 season. Sundin would record 78 points, but the Leafs, getting ready to blow things up, would release Sundin to free agency, ending his 13-year tenure in the blue and white. Sundin would receive offers from the Rangers, Canadiens, and Canucks, but he took his time and weighed his options, even considering hanging up the skates. But finally, halfway throughout the following season, Sundin made his decision, signing a 1-year deal to play in Vancouver, where he had one last shot to win it all. He would make his Canucks debut that January, and in 48 games would produce just 28 points. His Canucks would make the playoffs, but after losing in the second round to the Blackhawks, Sundin decided to leave Vancouver, and in September, he would sadly announce his retirement from the NHL. Dominik Hasek needs no introduction, but judging on the theme of today's video, you would think he'd go on an eventual decline on some random team like everyone else, but that's not the case. Instead, Hasek's time in Ottawa has become one of the biggest what-if scenarios in franchise history. When Hasek signed in Ottawa for the 05-06 season, he had a lot to prove. He was not only pushing 40 years old, but he was coming off of unretiring from his stint as a Red Wing. No one doubted Hasek's talent. In fact, many believed he was all the Senators needed to get over the hump, as the 05-06 Senators were stacked, with a core of Daniel Alfredsson, Jason Spezza, and the all-star Danny Heatley. With a blue line of Big Zdeno Chara and Wayne Redden, they were built for a deep run, and all they needed was elite goaltending. All eyes were on the Dominator headed into that season, and he delivered, playing in 43 games with a record of 28-10-4, and posting a .925 save percentage along the way. But 43 games was all the Senators would get out of Hasek, and for this, we need to go to the 2006 Winter Olympics. Just 10 minutes into a game between Germany and the Czech Republic, Hasek would re-injure his groin, making a save against Germany. The Senators were still optimistic for his return, but when days became weeks and weeks became months, it was evident that Hasek needed a lot more time to recover. While he was out, Ray Emery had to take his place, and although Ray did all he could, the Senators would get ousted in the second round of the 06 playoffs by none other than the Buffalo Sabres. When Hasek recovered from his injury, he opted to leave Ottawa that offseason and would sign back for a second stint in in Detroit, eventually retiring 2 years later. Many question just how good the Senators could have been that year if Hasek remained healthy, as those early 2000 Senators looked almost destined for a cup, and many argue that the 2006 Stanley Cup was the one that got away. It's always odd to see some of the best end their careers on the most random of teams, but as seen in today's video, all it takes is one trade, call-up, or the strive for a cup to cement your legacy or finish it off with a bang.
All right, that's Chris Chelios. He just loves to play the game. Back to Bill and Mike in the studio.